All right, I think we probably should begin because we have people online, we have people here. We have a quorum. So first of all, let me welcome everybody to our September meeting of the DAC committee. Before we get into the agenda, I'm going to take a point of personal privilege, if I may, to say that this will be my last meeting as a member of the DAC.
Oh dear.
Really?
And
Oh no.
for a variety of good reasons, not bad reasons, but nevertheless, I wanted to thank everybody on this committee and past members who worked very hard to stand this group up. It has proven to be an extremely useful group for the DASH staff. I've heard this feedback from them, so I'm not making this up. I've also want to thank all the DASH staff that are here and others who are not here for their generous time and effort to make this committee a success. And I'm quite confident, since this has been a group effort from the beginning, that this will only go on to be even greater success in the future. So thank you for that point of personal privilege. And now let's go to the roll call.
Okay, so Jim Durham.
Right here. Things I forget later, or to thank Ross for his leadership right now. Because I don't think the TAC would have been nearly as successful, even though it has been a team effort and everybody's contributed. He's provided tremendous leadership. Thank you.
Salma Gurshal. Abdelraham El Nubi.
Present.
Yvette Jiang.
Thank you. I would also like to echo Jim. Thank you, Ross, for your leadership and for building us up. You know, well, our memory of DASH committee will always, include you.
Nafal Kulam.
Present.
Jason Kunik.
Present, and I would also, again, longstanding member, want to thank Ross. Ross got us through pre-COVID, COVID, kept everything going, not only built this thing up from the ground up, of course, staff support, but really gathered the cats around for quite a period of time, kept us focused and productive, and great thanks to you, Ross, and outstanding leadership, and thank you.
Jim Mazlanka.
I just also want to thank Ross for all the work that he's done to keeping our crazy things together and keeping us directed here. And we wish you best in your new and coming ventures.
Matthew McCannis. Bonnie.
Meeting room, maybe.
Matthew McCannis.
That's what I was telling you.
Bonnie O'Day.
Hi, this is Matt.
Oh, hi, Matt.
Hi. Yes, I'm voting in.
This is Bonnie, and I also want to echo and add something. I've chaired meetings before, and it's really, really hard to get people to stick to the agenda sometimes and get us out of here on time. And I think Ross has done an excellent job on that, and I really appreciate how you've reached out ahead of meetings and asked for people's ideas and then passed that on to the staff, so those are addressed. So thank you.
Ross Simons.
Here.
Eric Adams.
Present. As a new member, I'd like to say thanks, Ross, for recruiting.
Marcus Bernier.
Here, and then echoing James and also Eric, I've had limited exposure to the meetings that I've had with you, Ross, but it's clear that you've made a real organizational impact here in getting everyone together and continue to follow the agendas and be enthused about advising about public transit. So thank you.
Daniel Cartagena.
Here, I'd also like to just say one quick thing, Ross. I think during the interview process with this, you had challenged that this is still very much something that's in the making. Think about that every time we get an email or we come together. This is what we make it, and I can see that your imprint is here. It's made a very strong and lasting impression, and I hope myself and the rest of the members will take up that challenge. So thank you.
And Eric Van Horn.
Present. And Ross, thank you for everything. I think your empathy and insistence on all voices being heard and really giving everyone a platform to speak up been highlights during your time.
Perfect. So before I hand it off to Josh, I also want to thank you, Ross. I'm kind of new. I've been here for 6 months and it definitely has been a learning process. And I thank everyone here from DAC and you for all the support that I've received the time that I've been here. And yeah, thank you. You have done a great job leading the team and we'll take it from here.
All right, we have the minutes from the last meeting of May 7th. Any amendments, comments to the minutes? Oh, both Jims. So let's go Jim D first.
On the printed copy under the budget discussion, where it says the board of directors is greatly concerned with, I think the words advocating against need to be stricken. I think the board is greatly concerned with the continuous reductions the city calls for efficiency savings. So I think that we ended up with some extra words in there. But I recommend we delete the phrase advocating against. We delete the word with. Or we delete the word advocating against, but as it reads, it sounds like the board's against.
Yes,
Advocating
exactly.
against.
I think that is a very good amendment. Anybody object to that editorial amendment? Okay, so adopted.
Okay. I read through the minutes and they seem to do a very nice job of summarizing the meeting. I move that they be adopted as amended.
I have a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstention? So adopted. All right. Now we move to the DAC update with our general manager, Josh Baker, who has led his team to a record-breaking year. So I think we should applaud him for that great ridership achievement for this past year. Josh, take it away.
Thank you. Well, I'm going to start talking about you and then I'll talk about other things. But no, thank you. I would echo the sentiments of the group that we really appreciate the work you've done on this committee. For those who are relatively newer to the committee or have joined since I guess I would call it a stumbling startup during the pandemic, which was a real challenge for us. This committee was a vision of mine coming here to Dash to really encapsulate the experience of our riders and our community. As you all know, we have a board of directors. The board of directors is the governance entity of the organization and who I report to. But prior to this, there really wasn't a place where we were pulling people out of the community to really talk on a more granular level about what we're doing and how that's working or not working. And also to sort of, in some ways, also have more colleagues in the room, for lack of a better term, to help us to make the right decisions and to help to also represent us in the community. So sort of a multi-pronged approach of the committee. And I think that everyone here has done a great job of making that happen. And Ross being the first one to step up to chair the committee, we really appreciate it. And I remember shortly after the pandemic, when we could get together, Ross asked me to meet him for lunch and we chatted and he goes, "What do you want with this thing?" For lack of a better way of saying it. And I said, well, I want whatever you all feel is right, and is best in representing our passengers and our communities. And so, yeah, I also feel like it's in its infancy, and will continue to grow. And I'm sure that with the way you set things up, the way the members have participated and helped to form this, you've done an excellent job. So we have a small token of appreciation for you. I will not take complete credit for this. I will instead hand that to Camilla and her team for pulling it together, but I will say that it is you were well deserving of it, and this is a little plaque that just says, "Ross, with sincere appreciation for your dedicated service as the first chair of the Dash Advisory Committee."
Thank you so much. No, we have to have a picture.
Yeah, this is what happens, yeah.
Okay.
Picture.
Out of the way.
No, you're fine.
Yeah, you're fine.
Thank you. Thank you all.
Yeah, of course. So with that, I will say one business item before I provide some general updates from my point of view, and then get out of your way to do the things that you're here to do, which is really to collaborate and work with the team and help us understand the way to make the right decisions. So as I mentioned, the committee is envisioned as a group that's really, you make the decisions about what it is you want to be talking about, where you should be focusing your energy. Try to put as few confines on it as possible. You are not a governance entity. You are not subject to the general rules of public governance. You're very much just a committee, an ad hoc committee, so to say, associated with the organization. So it is entirely your process that you decide to who's going to chair the committee. We've never had a chair leave and bring a new chair on board, so you may want to talk about that a little bit. I don't think it's the end of the world if you don't decide that tonight. I don't think that you should. I think you should talk about it and figure out what you feel is the best way to approach that. The guidelines Camilla has put together come straight out of the document that we assembled in envisioning the committee. I will also say, if at any point in the future you look at those guidelines and say, gee, this isn't working, let's talk about that. Because they're exactly that, they're guidelines, and we can adjust them to make sure they're successful. So I know you have a vice chair, right? So yeah, so you're yeah. In theory, the responsibility falls to you to help chair the meetings going forward, Jim, and until you all figure out what you want to do. So that's my take on it. I'm always available if you want to reach out. Camilla, as she mentioned, is still getting herself oriented, but has done an incredible amount of things already since just getting here. So if it's anything that Camilla can't help you with, we'll talk and figure out how to support you in that. So hopefully that makes sense. Happy to answer any questions about that specifically if there are any that immediately come to mind. Oh, and I think the other thing to mention is that I think we're always looking for committee members, but we will need your help in speaking to the community and people that are using our service who can potentially join on, or if you know someone who might be interested, and how we do that. So
Yeah, we're happy to do social media. We can do an e-blast. That we're always looking for people to be part of the committee. So, or if you know of a specific group that we can reach out, I'm happy to do so.
I have a question
Sure.
and a comment. My question is, do you know how many vacancies we have on the committee?
We're authorized 18.
Okay,
So
Do you know how many we have right now?
Have 14.
14? Okay. All right. And my second is more of a comment. I spoke to the Transportation Committee of the Commission on Aging, and they might have an interest in having a rep on this committee.
Okay, that'd be great.
Alan Dinsmore is the chair of that little subcommittee, and I'd be happy to give you his contact information, Camilla.
Yeah, please, please share that information with me and we can, I can reach out to him.
Okay.
I would add very quickly, since you mentioned this, Bonnie, that our school representative aged out by going to Northern Virginia Community College. So Salma actually is not an official member of the committee anymore, although she did express in an email to me that if her schooling allowed her, she might be interested in being a committee member. So one might want to reach out to her. But Jason, you were gonna
Yes,
follow up with
it
the
is.
school system,
it's
right?
in work,
Okay.
it's in work and hopefully coming soon. So they just started school and hopefully they'll have a little competitive. They've made it internally competitive. I just asked for a name. So Mr. Birch, I shot him another email today, and then once I hear back. Worst case scenario, I'll walk over there.
And that member is ex officio, so is not against the count of 18.
Thank you.
Great, so lots of exciting stuff ahead for you all as a committee, and I look forward to continuing to support you, and my team is here to support you. Camilla, of course, is your staff liaison, so please be in touch with her directly as you need to in any way, shape, or form. So other updates, we didn't really talk about these, so I'm gonna take the floor for 5 minutes or so, just kind of tell you where things are at. The first thing I would say is thank you, Ross, for mentioning our ridership celebration. We had a fantastic event in the West End. We had a little block party that Camilla and the team put together. By the way, she's shorthanded by 3 positions
Yes,
right now,
3.
so pretty impressive to pull that off with almost no staff. But we're gonna get that fixed for you.
Yes,
I understand we're on the right track. But you know, that's a reflection of the success of Dash. 5.3 million riders is more than the system has ever carried in its 40-year history. And Martin sent me the numbers for July, and they were already substantially higher than they were the previous July. So that 5.3 million is in the fiscal year, which ended June 30. So the month of July continued that trend, that trajectory, which is really great.
Thunder for my update.
You know,
Yeah, really.
should I talk about it? Or you
Go ahead, yeah, go ahead.
So, you know, and Martin, I think we'll talk more about this. This is a really, really great thing for us. It demonstrates how important our services are that we provide our community, how much transit makes a difference. I think that one of the things that is often overlooked is the economic benefits that that's providing. You know, we often hear, well, that's, you know, your ridership's only that high because it's free, or your ridership's only that high because of service enhancement, those kinds of things. Well, maybe it is, but the reality is that ridership is driving the local economy. Those are people who are going to do things in Alexandria, in and around the community. And so the higher our numbers get, right, the better that is for our community, for our city, and for our economy. It's something that regionally, I don't think the region has caught up with us, so to say, but we're also seeing improvements at Metro. They're seeing record ridership recovery. You know, rail is still behind, but I think bus has always been proven to be a mode that really, really is critical, and clearly here in Alexandria, we're showing that. The year ahead has a lot of excitement, a lot of challenges for us. We're gonna be heading very quickly into a budget cycle. We're gonna be heading into an election cycle. We have a whole lot of things going on. You're gonna be very busy. Hats off to you. I'll ask you in a couple of months how you're feeling. But you know, fall is always a busy time, and so we're really trying to gear up to make sure that we have the information and the resources available to the people who need that information. Whether it's a committee member, you know, whether it's an existing or, you know, council member in the running, whatever the case is, we've got to make sure we've got the information. And so my goal is going to be to try to keep you all as informed as possible. And I would like to continue to come back as much as I can to kind of give you updates. I think, frankly, the challenges are pretty clear. The usual challenges are always there. Money, right? There's not enough money and we've got to find a way to pay for what we do. And so we believe very strongly that we are, like I mentioned, an economic driver. So money put into what we do turns around and helps to generate money for the tax base. And so we're going to be working hard to make sure we tell that story in the coming year. Regionally, you've probably heard there are just several things going on. One of them is what's called DMV Moves. And you may have heard a little bit about this. I serve on the Government Partners Advisory Committee, I believe it's called, for DMV Moves. I've been to a couple of meetings. So far, the conversation has been very focused on how to make sure that our regional services are meeting the expectations of our community, and we're world-class, right? Candidly, I think we're pretty world-class to start with, but anyway, you can always do better, I guess. You know, the underlying theme there is, what do we need to be working towards? How do we need to be improving what we're doing? How do we need to be making sure that our communities are served in the right way? You know, WMATA is working through the Better Bus Network. We've recently done our new network. But frankly, at the center of all of it is you can guess, the money question. And dedicated funding for WMATA is super, super critical. And so that is a part of this conversation. And in the conversation, we are working to make sure that it's not just dedicated funding for WMATA, it's dedicated for regional transit. Because WMATA really, really is critical. But also, all the regional providers are. In some ways, depending on where you are within the community, they're both, right, coming together and creating what is more than an essential service for the communities. And so when we're trying to solve that problem, a lot of the conversation is around, how do you solve the problem that's existed since the 60s and was never resolved back then, about how you fund WMATA? And in doing that, how do you make sure the passenger experience is really excellent? And how do you make sure that our regional systems like Dash and others are supported as well? So there is another group working, I came from a meeting just this morning, the Northern Virginia Transportation Commission, NVTC. And NVTC is the Virginia entity, right? And NVTC is working hard with us, and I'm sitting on that group, to talk about the Virginia side of things, right? How do we establish that dedicated revenue coming from Virginia? And our hope is that they will run in symmetry, and that what we do at NVTC and then that conversation, we can really bring to the table solutions that help to complement the DMV Moves effort. To say it's complex is like the understatement of the century, because if it wasn't complex, this whole question would have been solved 50 plus years ago, and it wasn't. So I'm managing my expectations about where we get. I am incredibly hopeful and optimistic that this will be the time when we're able to get some kind of, regional funding mechanism that helps us support transit in DMV. Because at the end of the day, it's about the entire DMV. And making sure that that is sustained and supported. So again, I have optimism about it, be watching it closely and working very hard to be a part of that while we continue to ensure that Dash services meet and exceed the expectations of the community. Martin will undoubtedly talk about the challenges that high ridership does create for us, and I will just touch on that and simply say that we're working hard internally to make sure that that increase in ridership does not diminish the quality of the service we provide. And that means a couple of things. One, it means that the passenger experience on the bus is of the highest caliber, which we've become known to be. We are the pride of the region in the sense of the little engine that could. That's like the way I like to call it. We work really hard to have a high quality of service and to be very responsive to our community and very flexible to making that work. It's paid off. The ridership has shown that, and we're glad to see that. As Martin will probably mention, increased ridership brings challenges related to on-time performance. It brings challenges related to the crowding of buses. Some of those things we can tackle in our capital projects, in our capital programs. You might have heard me talk previously about how I've talked to the team, and Ray, handles our capital side of things, about pivoting and working more towards 60-foot buses in more places because they cost exactly the same amount of money to run. They take the same number of drivers, but they transport twice the number of people. And so when you're dealing with crush loads with the school kids and other areas, when you have more of these larger vehicles, you're able to move them and get them to their destinations. What you start to lose is, as mentioned, is your service reliability. And that will be something we'll have to work to tackle. That's on top of the desires and goals to meet aspects of the transit vision plan. The other thing is internally. What we're working through right now is challenges with maintenance. And that has a lot to do with the span of service under which we're operating. So we're pretty close to 24-hour service most days of the week now. That means that the buses are out there longer hours, right? They're less available to us. And we have to pivot and try to figure out how we get the repairs done and keep the fleet operating in the right mode, considering that we can't access them in the same way that we did before. And what we're finding is that that is a weak point for us. That is not to say that preventative maintenance and state of good repair are not our top priority. They are. We've just got to figure out what do we need to do in order to keep it at our standard. That's where we're seeing some real struggles right now. We'll talk more about that as the year goes on and kind of what we're doing related to that. But those are some highlight challenges. So at the end of the day, I will hand my time back to you and simply say, as we move forward, I'll keep you all informed of what the board is doing and talking about. I will mention that we are restructuring the board meetings a little bit to be more strategic in our conversations. I'm optimistic that that's going to also help to bring those members, connect those members with what we've got going on and what we're doing, and continue to make us successful. So with that, I will stop and entertain any questions you might have before I get out of your way and let you get through the agenda and Ross doesn't end up here until 10 o'clock at night on his last meeting. Sure, go ahead, Bonnie.
Me? Okay.
Yeah.
So I assume that you're doing everything you can to deal with the crowding by putting your bigger buses on the lines that are the most crowded and but you said, I think you said that it's the boarding and stopping and all of that that's slowing down. Do you allow people to get on the back door of the bus and do people know that they can do that?
Yes, we do all door boarding and alighting. And that is one of the great values of fare-free service is that we can do that. And I would frankly think that is why our on-time performance, although it has dropped, has not completely nosedived. Maybe you think it's nosedived, I don't know, but it's definitely gone down. Our on-time performance has gone down, but it's probably not nearly as bad as if they were having to all come in the front door.
Do people know that they can board from the back door? You know, is there like some kind of sign that, or indication, or isn't that a problem? People know they can.
Yeah, there is a sign. It seems like people are doing it from when I've been out looking and watching.
Okay.
When a bus pulls up, usually though at the more crowded, busy stops, the sort of 2-3 people stops along the way, they're all waiting at the front door and get on, and that's okay. It's, when you pull up, next to ACHS and there's a bunch of people standing there, they can just open all, and on a 60-foot bus, you've got 3 doors and they're wider, so they just flow onto the bus and flow off, and that's ideal in those situations.
Jim, go ahead.
One of the things that I noticed is that I think it's this week or next week or something, the DC connector is gonna go and so I'm just kind of wondering.
Circulator, you mean?
Circulator rather, yeah.
Circulator. Mhm.
I'm just wondering if we are, I know because the circulator is currently an all electric fleet, I'm wondering if we're looking at possibly hiring some of their mechanics to help us maintain our buses.
Sure,
Is
sure.
that
So we have seen a huge increase in the number of applications, and I think a lot of them are from Circulator.
Oh, really?
We are, of course, screening those and interviewing. We are very interested in people who come with those skill sets. WMATA would be doing the same, Fairfax, Arlington, et cetera. So I do feel confident that there is a home for all of those folks. Whether they're all here at Dash or not, that's, we're obviously going to screen them to make sure they are to our qualifications requirements. But I think there's still some to be seen. There has been a lot of calls for the Circulator route to be absorbed in the WMATA, and that's not something obviously that I'm a part of, but that's a DC conversation and something they've got to sort out. Yeah. Yeah. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Josh. Appreciate it.
If I may.
Go ahead.
You talk about the 5.3 million riders in the economic strategy. Is there an effort to sort of kind of quantize that because I feel like part of the argument has to be, it doesn't have to be, but if you're making an economic fit, it seems that it would be ideal to have some measurement. And I've seen like research where they talk about for like every mile bike trail, you get so much economic, development. And I'm just wondering if there isn't some calculation, some measure, some study that could be done similarly strengthen that argument.
We've got some Virginia and regional reports that are already available, and we can certainly get those circulated to you all. That's exactly though what I'm looking to do. We're looking to dive deeper on a local level and be able to tell that story. Because it's important for a couple of reasons. One, it's important that people understand what they're getting in return for their investment. It's important that people understand why transit is benefiting them. And it's important for our elected officials who support us. If someone's going to be talking about investments in transit, it's helpful for them to have that information and be able to talk about that. And on a state and federal level, it's important for us in the context of talking about the need to find that dedicated source of revenue. Because you've got to fund public transit. It's public transit for a reason. It's a public service. I always like to say it's an infrastructure. I know that's a little bit of a stretch, but that's the way I see it. We are an essential part of the community. We facilitate people getting where they need to go. And so those investments, we need to show that return on investment. So that's exactly what we're going to be working on.
Yeah, I'd love to see whatever.
Yeah, definitely will.
Jim Durham, quickly.
Yeah, just one quick follow-up on the challenge associated with the 5.3 million. Like Bonnie, I assume you're doing everything you can, but I looked at the August service, safety service metrics, and the reliability is well down, from what it has been traditionally. Jason in his comments, to all of us before the board said, hey, I'm concerned about the overcrowding. It's impacting the customer experience and the customer service index is really nosedived, into the 40s from a target of 80. And so there's a point where you can only do so much and you need more help. Can you give us a sense of, is it just more money at some point? You're gonna need more money than the next budget cycle to further increase the number of bus drivers and increase the frequency. I mean, I just don't see you being able to, I mean, maybe wrong, solve this overcrowding experience, poor experience and reliability just by better management. I mean,
So I will,
we're just gonna need more resources.
I will dodge your question, but say it's the right question. And I will dodge it only because I'm gonna say that I know that Martin is really gonna be able to talk in more detail about those various approaches, but in some ways, yes, it's about money. In others, it's about how we use our existing resources. But yeah, we're gonna continue talking about. I think the one thing I will say is that it is a cautionary note that we wanna make sure everyone understands. While we definitely want to continue to meet the goals of the transit strategic plan, right? And the new network and implement those corridors of service that have long been neglected. Eisenhower is an example of one that comes to mind, and we repeatedly are bringing it up and it's repeatedly not getting funded. At the core of it, what we do today, we have to do tomorrow. Our mission is to be there, show up tomorrow the same way we showed up today. We'd love to show up better, right? But we don't want to show up worse. And if we're showing up worse, we got to fix that. So hopefully that's a segue into whatever Martin talks about.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, marketing updates. Camilla, please.
Yes, so I think we all have talked about the ridership celebration, so I know some of you were able to attend the event and I just wanted to share some photos. It was a pretty big event. We had over 100 community members that were able to attend. We were able to host 9 community vendors. So we had vendors from different departments, city departments. And yeah, it was a great celebration. So I do want to thank everyone for being able to join us last week. So we do have a few events that I would like to share with everyone in case you're able to attend. We do have the 2024 rodeo happening on Sunday, October 6th. It's from 9 a.m. to 2 p.m. Everyone is welcome to attend. You don't have to be a Dash staff to attend the event. You're able to just come here and enjoy the event, or if you want to be a judge of the rodeo, you can also sign up to be a judge. We're gonna have community vendors again. We're gonna have a food truck. We're gonna have games for the kids. We're gonna have music and obviously the rodeo competition from 9 a.m. to 12 p.m. So if you're able to attend, that's gonna happen here at Dash.
One of Jason's favorite activities.
Highly recommend it. Sign up. You can be a judge, be a judge. It's a blast. You get to ride in a bus very fast, stop very quickly, but safe the entire time. Highly recommend it. And I'm gonna do my absolute best to be there.
Yes, thank you. And if you want to be a judge, let me know.
It would be again, and you better believe it.
Okay, okay. And definitely this year we have a NASCAR theme, so we'll definitely do some decorations and some activities related to that.
Appropriate.
Some other events that this event is hosted by the Office of Climate Action, but Dash is going to be part of the event. So this Saturday is September 28th from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. There's going to be an EV ride and drive event at Chicopin Park. We're going to be there with one of our electric buses. So if you're able to attend, there's going to be a lot of e-bikes, scooters, and other different vehicles, EV vehicles as well. So we also recently they notified us that we won the Transit Fleet of the Year award. So this is done by the Greater Washington Region Clean Cities Coalition. So they notified us that we were going to receive this award, and this is happening October 16th from 8:30 to 6 p.m. There's gonna be a conference. Josh is gonna be there. He's gonna receive the award. If you wanna join or if you wanna follow us on social media, we'll definitely be posting about the award and the conference as well. Any questions or any comments?
Right here also.
It's gonna be at Chicopin Park.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you very much. Before I go to the ridership update, I did wanna, I was pulling this up online, following up on your question about the economic impacts of transit. NVTC did an excellent report, last year. It's called The Value of Transit. So if you go to their website, novatransit.org/value of transit, they have a great, summary of some of the positive impacts that transit provides. And, there's a dashboard where you kind of have interactive, hear about the story. But I think the one takeaway I had is that for every dollar invested in transit in Northern Virginia, it returns $1.60 to state revenue. So 160% return on investment. So I think things like that are what Josh is talking about, that we want to make sure we tell that story. All right, with that being said, I'm going to jump into the ridership update. As Josh mentioned, ridership continues to surge. This graph shows the last 7 or so fiscal years. The blue bars are the pre-pandemic baseline that we had for annual, actually monthly ridership totals. So you can see that. The orange bars represent the last fiscal year, FY24. We're calling it the post-pandemic. That was those are 5.3 million annual boardings that we just set. And then the green bar is the first month of FY25, the current fiscal year. So you can see we are going even higher than we did in previous years. So really happy to see that trend. And then next slide, if you could, have it broken down by route as well. I suspect this would be of interest to this group. These graphs are showing the average weekday boardings by route. We're comparing April 2023, so right before Potomac Yard opened, to April 2024. You can kind of see which routes are carrying the largest number of passengers. Obviously, the 35 in the West End, that's the one that runs on Beauregard Street, is carrying an enormous amount of passengers, 6,000 plus average boardings on a typical weekday. That makes it one of the most productive routes in the entire region. So really excited to see the growth in that corridor, especially as we talk about the West End Transitway coming down the line and it being a precursor to that. You can also see the 30 is up over 3,000, and 31 as well, over 3,000 boardings per weekday. Those are both, I think, record highs. And then you can see some of the other routes as well. It's a little hard to see with the smaller ridership routes, but you can see some of the growth there, especially on routes like the 34, the 36. Presumably some of those increases due to the opening of the metro station and additional riders using those services. So yeah, that's kind of in a nutshell. That's the ridership picture. I was going to kind of expand a little bit on some of the challenges that Josh mentioned, but before I do that, any questions on the actual numbers that you see here?
Sorry.
Martin, do you have any rough idea of how much impact the opening of Potomac Yard Metro has had on Dash so far?
Well, it's hard to say. I mean, you can see some of the, the 34, the 33, and the 36 are the 3 routes that serve that station. So you can see that most of those are up. The 33 is a little bit down, which is a little surprising, but it's a very minor decrease. I think overall, though, you've seen the increases in ridership system-wide. It's hard to attribute specific factors. I mean, obviously with free fares and COVID recovery. So it's a hard question to answer. It's hard to specify that, but on the routes that serve that station, you are seeing increases for the most part. I would note that the largest increases are the frequent routes. I do want to, take this opportunity to emphasize the importance of high frequent service. The 31, 35, and the 36 have some of the biggest increases. So it really shows that the importance of frequent service.
Jason?
Yeah, just a few things. So I always characterize myself as a hyper rider. I'm always on Dash. I try to stay away from everybody else because Dash is, a special place in my heart, but also they're always on time, they're clean, they're safe, and that's what I'm looking for. I go through, Potomac Yards, that thing's a bust. There's not many riders there right now. There just isn't, just because of what's going on. There's, when it comes to Amazon, I get that, or I should say, what is that, 33, 34? I spend a lot of time between 31 and 36 AB, and of course, a little bit of 35. And Martin, we've had the conversation before. Is there any way to strike the students population out of these numbers? Because I'm gravely concerned because when we were talking about free fare or back in the day, we hypothetically talked about students using it. Well, again, my daughter graduated from Alexandria State High School last year, and I liaise with the school. I live right down the street and frequent it often. So I have no qualms with the students or the school. I love them all, and that's why I'm concerned, is because I'm also a rider, it is so congested. It's all students. Now, if we're giving ourselves pats on the back, which we deserve when it comes to ridership, but if it's based off of student numbers, and I see hundreds and hundreds a day, just me, that reflects in these numbers. I'm not gonna call those people that are out going shopping or taking the family out to a restaurant. I mean, these are students going to school because what would you rather do? Walk or take a nice bus? I would take a nice bus. That's why I'm on the bus. So I guess I'm becoming increasingly more uncomfortable with these numbers because I know they're not real if we strike the students out of there. Now, if we say students belong in there and that's what we should be, well, then we need to start telling a different story, because then that's a different mission statement, if you ask me. So if I'm alone on this one, but that's part of our congestion problem, I'm starting to see, and it's, later in the conversation, I'm starting to see a safety problem when it comes to people on the road and on the street. I see it on a daily basis. This isn't one-off. I frequent these areas 6 to 8 times a day, whether on the bus or in a car. And so I'm not sold on the numbers. They're disappointing to me because I don't see any rigor in being able to separate the different categories. And I think that's important. And I think we need to have a conversation about that.
So help us, Jason, understand why you think not having students counted is somehow deviating from the mission of Dash.
If the students, okay, if rates were a quarter tomorrow or $1, right?
Okay.
Those students are almost all those students are not going to be there. They weren't there pre-COVID. Because I rode the same amount of time then as I do now. I've watched the change. I've witnessed it on a daily basis. I've witnessed it. I'm not against students riding a bus, but if we have many problems, we have a congestion problem. Most of the stoplights around here, you can't turn right on red anymore. So that backs up traffic. In front of the Bradley Center, there's a green turn light. You can get 1 Dash bus, 2 cars, and if everybody's working well together, 3 cars. That goes to a 60-foot bus. Guess what? You're gonna maybe get 1 car through there. Congestion's already terrible. It's gonna be worse. And you're gonna have 40 to 60 students at that bus stop. And it's not for one stop, it's from the hours of 2 to like 6. So we're causing our own problems here. Like, if we throw money at it and say, well, we need more buses, we're already choking off the vehicles going through there. Students are out in the street because there's more students than there is space for the bus stop. Dash security's out there randomly. The city police department is out there daily. It's crazy what's going on over there at the Bradley Center. And and that's where I'm going with this is, if we center on the numbers, say this is our success, well, then we're totally blind to things that are unsafe. And it's because I care about this. That's what I'm talking about, that is we're making unsafe situations. So I get free fare, but let's pause that for a second. Let's just talk about, are we on time? Is it clean and is it safe? And I see all 3 of those factors on a daily basis going down. I'll yield my conversation.
Okay, thank you. Other comments, Jim?
Well, I'd like Martin to go first.
Yeah, if I could just maybe
Please.
offer 1 or 2 comments. I think you make a lot of good points. Certainly we acknowledge that students do comprise a large portion of our ridership. I think that's unavoidable. I would note that our pre-student rides program dates back to 2017. So we did have free fares for students before that. The challenge now, and it's directly relevant to what you're talking about, is that with free fares, we don't have a way to specifically count student boarding. So we don't have a great way to quantify, what percentage of our riders are students versus non-students. We have some ways to do it. One of the things is we like to look at teacher work days and see, when school's not in session, but everything else is open, what is our ridership, how far down does it go? And that's been kind of a way that we've gotten at that, but it's not perfect. You know, when we do that analysis, we see that there was an increase from, you know, pre-pandemic when students rode free to now. So there is a significant increase, especially on the routes that I know you use.
I average 4 to 5 people on those routes.
Yeah.
Before free fare. Now, I mean, some days I can't get a seat.
Yeah.
And that's not rare. And that's for several stops, not just, you know.
Yeah.
It's not just that one opportunity. So.
Yeah.
Again, I plead my case.
So I guess, so just, as we've discussed, we do try to put the larger buses. We have about 40-footers and 60-footers. We've also added some additional trips. We have a new trip that we added in August that's tailored for people coming from the west end, the 35 that becomes a 36. I don't know if you've seen that. bus,
Yeah,
but
I have that.
That's the same thing in the afternoon coming back, and I think that's helped a little bit from all that I've heard. It's been very successful, very crowded. But to your larger question, the only thing I can offer at this point, I think, I don't know if you were able to watch the board meeting a couple weeks ago, but they had a pretty lengthy discussion about the role of Dash versus AZPS, how we should work together. So I would encourage you, if you haven't already, to go back and watch that a little bit. But really, I think it does get to a larger question about, you know, what we see our roles as, and how we move forward from here.
Thank you.
Martin, in the past, when this has come up, has given us a number, and I may be a little off, but it's something like 15% of the ridership might be students. I mean, so
It's a little higher than that,
substantial
yeah.
number, 15%, it's a pretty big number. And as alluded to, it tends to be concentrated on a few of the lines that are already pretty popular. So I think we know that these numbers include a significant student population. The question I would pose to Jason and the group is, what do we do about it?
Well, you recall that when we had the mayor here, we had this conversation, which was an interesting conversation, as you recall, those of you who attended that meeting. Because the mayor, in a sense, was arguing that at some point in time, that maybe the ACPS budget, part of it, should come to Dash. Bill, as a school board member and candidate now for council, should be aware of those discussions. You know, that's one possible suggestion, right? Which is you get more resources, you're able to handle the load a little bit better that way. That's one idea. Whether it's workable or not, you don't know. I mean, he went as far as arguing, as you recall, that at least for high school, not for middle school, right, or elementary school, that the responsibility should be formally transferred from ACPS to Dash with the appropriate resources. Now, we're obviously gonna have a different council, different point of view here, but that's certainly one part of the equation here that one needs to think about, right? So if we're serving a specific population which has funding for transportation, and they're not fully using that in one sense, but using Dash as a substitute, then one should consider how does one adjust the budget accordingly. I'm just throwing that out as one item. Abdul, you want to say something on this one?
Yeah. So just a couple of things from ACPS perspective. ACPS has a huge bus driver shortage this year, much bigger than last year. ACPS continues to offer bonuses for recruiting bus drivers and everything. It's not solving the problem. We're getting so many complaints from parents about kids getting to school late, buses not showing up, and all of that. All of that said, I think what this is going to lead to is that conversation we're talking about, that the mayor brought up last meeting he was here, and I actually had a follow-up conversation with him about this to better understand what he's talking about. And yes, he was talking about Dash taking over transporting secondary students, high school and middle school, from ACPS, and ACPS would only transport elementary school students. I think that conversation will continue, and it probably will we'll probably hear more voices calling for that with the way things are going right now, with what the transportation situation is with ACPS. And my own conversations with the ACPS superintendent, she is open-minded to the idea. Now that, you know, for the second, third year, we're having transportation challenges. So I think this conversation will continue, and we'll see where it goes. But yes, to your point, if that occurs, certainly more resources will be needed for that, and I will be someone who support that and be involved with that. So
Thank you, Abdul. I appreciate that. Can I just pull on one other thread here that you raised, Jason, because I would like Martin to sort of give us the statistics on this. You also raised the safety issue here. So the question is, are we actually seeing a rise in safety complaints in the system over the last, let's say, 6 months, 8 months, something like that? Or are we dealing with what are perceived as safety issues that may be more not dash related, but maybe community related? I'm thinking particularly about Bradley, which is not, Bonnie knows, shops there, I shop there, not the greatest place compared to what it was 5 years ago. But what do we know about the actual stats?
Well, Raymond, take first shot now.
Okay.
Yeah, I can provide a response to that. So I think it's a little bit of both. In an absolute sense, yes. The volume of incidences, security and safety occurrences has increased due to a couple of things. We're just running a lot more service. We're carrying a lot more people. And when you just take proportions into account, it's expected. Now, whether or not it is rising proportionally with the increase in student ridership or proportionally to our services, we don't quite have the data to make it an affirmative conclusion to that. So it's not quite something we can't quite touch on at this moment, but it's something we can't look into. We'll also say that the nature of the just general public at large has changed since COVID. You look at confrontations aboard commercial flying, and other general public service sectors and just interaction between with the general public in general. Things have changed since COVID started, and we felt an impact of that here at Dash. Used to be that the worst we've seen was a verbal disagreement about something, and typically just ends right there. That same verbal disagreement now could rise to a thrown soda. We have seen a couple of knives pulled every now and then. And so we're seeing things that we have not seen before in past history, but I don't think we're in a place to say that it's specifically due to student ridership, COVID, or just ridership levels in general.
Thank you, Jim Mislanka.
One of the things that we should keep in mind on this whole discussion between ACPS and Dash, you know, working together, is the fact that again, I think tomorrow you guys are going to have a discussion with FTA, and one of the requirements of FTA is that basically you're not supposed to be providing direct FTA or you're not supposed to be providing directed FTAs or service to students. And that's one of the things that, you know, they're back in years ago, it was basically like, okay, we'll just throw another bus over there and have them pick up the ACPS students and whatnot. The Dash has to make sure that any bus that serves students also serves the general public. So that's an important thing that has to be considered in this thing, that you can't just say, well, ACPS can provide the student or the resources, and then Dash will just provide, you know, dedicated services to the students that they can't do with FTA funds. So that's one of the things that we've got to be real careful about. So you both, that'll all be part of the discussion that we have to have, but that's something that a lot of people don't realize.
Thank you for that insight. Any other comments on this, or should we continue with your presentation?
I guess that's an excellent point, but the conversation, I think, needs to recognize, I've lived in two different places where my children, as young as 4 years old, took the public bus because the jurisdiction didn't provide school buses. And so the idea of the public service bus also serving students is well accepted by everyone. And Jim's point is about, you can't dedicate an FTA asset to only students.
Right, exactly.
I think it makes an important distinction.
But prior to free fare, I would have had no problem putting my 12 or 11-year-old on the bus without me being on there. No issues at all, because I wrote it, no problem at all. No way in the world would I let them ride on today. Anybody can get on that bus at any time, and the things that I've witnessed during free fare, I am not allowing my children to go on there without me, period. Now, how is that helpful? It's frustrating. It's frustrating. It's a completely different experience than it was just a couple of years ago, in a not a very good way.
One of the, sorry, man, one of the purposes of this committee is to gather feedback such as that. So if that's a sentiment that exists, and clearly it is. It might be it might be a point of topic for us.
I have 14 friends that now drive to work that don't want to drive to work, that pay for parking because of this. Every child in my neighborhood does not get on that bus, and they used to. That's different.
So I would suggest that this could be a topic that can be penned, and we can take some effort to better understand what are the safety, even perceptions of safety, how it's changed from years ago to now. What is the reality? What can we do about it? And are there things that we can?
I think that'd be super helpful.
Conversation will continue. As we noticed in the headlines today, there was a bus hijacked in Los Angeles. And, you know, we're getting back to those days again, which was the bad old 70s and 80s. So historic perspective is important here too.
I do want to add something, something that we're doing with customer service is really trying to analyze data to see trends like this. So instead of just doing one-on-one calls or requests, really understanding how repetitive requests can become a point for us to talk about in the leadership team, to improvements that we can do to the service. So I'll definitely work with the team on seeing trends like this, so we can bring it up to leadership and maybe talk more of how we can improve that.
Abdul, you want to make one more comment?
No,
please?
I have a question. I'm sorry, maybe a basic question and may have been asked when I was here before. How do we measure the ridership when we're not doing fares anymore?
So we have a couple different ways right now. We still have fare boxes on the vehicles, and the drivers have buttons they can press. So currently, for every person that boards, they do manually press the button. That's one way that we have it. We also have all of our fleet have what are called APCs, automated passenger counters. So if you step on a dash bus and look immediately upwards, there's like a sensor there. It's like a state-of-the-art optical sensor technology that is able to count ons and offs for every stop that we serve. So we have multiple sources that we use. We are actually in the process of transitioning. You know, previous years we've used farebox data. This is the first year that we're planning to rely fully on those optical sensors, APCs. So we should have even more accurate data going forward.
Thank you.
Please proceed.
And then just the last point on the ridership, Josh had alluded to it, and you had asked the question about, you know, what does this mean? You know, we're in the process of quantifying that right now. But the main thing is that when you have this many people boarding the bus, you have to stop at more stops. You have more jostling, getting in, you know, people have to step off the bus to allow more people to get on, and the driver has to deal with people, you know, stepping back to the back area to make more room. There's a lot more mechanics that have to go through with each stop, so there's more dwell time. So your reliability is challenged, and a route, you know, in the service planning world, we call a cycle, like a route has a cycle, and you know that it takes 8 buses to maintain a certain headway. But if it takes longer and longer to make it through that cycle, maybe it's 9 or 10 buses, and that's where you add the cost. So, you know, we're quantifying what we need to maintain an acceptable level of reliability and on-time performance. And that may need to be factored into what our current service request looks like for next year. Just to maintain current service, not just avoiding cuts, but also adding buses and drivers to maintain our current service levels. So I wanted to highlight that, and that's something that I highlighted for the board when they had their meeting a couple weeks ago.
I would suggest in the future, those dashboards are actually very useful, quick snapshots for anybody to sort of grab and look at to see where you are in time, that you might share that with the DAC on a regular basis as well. Sure, it's just a piece of information. I think it would improve the conversation around the table to have that information beforehand.
Okay, well, with that, I'll move on to the next item, which is the Better Bus Network update. I don't have a lot of concrete updates to share on this because the WMATA project team is still finalizing their recommendations for next year's introductory phase. As you recall, this is the regional bus network redesign project that WMATA is leading. It's intended to be implemented in the first phase next summer, so probably late June. So we are coming up fast on that implementation. It's the entire region of WMATA network that is changing in terms of bus and route structures and bus route names. There are changes that will affect WMATA routes in Alexandria. So we are working closely with the WMATA project team on that. They had released a draft year one network in the spring that was subject to public feedback, including from members of this group, as well as city leadership. There was a lot of feedback. Areas of concern were Taney Avenue losing some of its service, Park Fairfax losing some service, and also North Van Dorn Street losing some service. So I can't provide any real concrete updates, but know that we are working very closely with WMATA project team, and we were working to address those specific areas. So hopefully, I think their timeline is it's either, I can't remember if it's late October or early November, they'll be coming out with their final recommendations, which would feed into their FY26 budget planning process. So you'll have one more chance to weigh in when that process begins. Any questions on the Better Bus Network?
Just, do you anticipate significant changes in Alexandria with what the WMATA buses are doing?
Most of the core routes, the high frequency routes are staying mostly the same. And if you look at the network that they had proposed in the spring, you'll see that there are some improvements, like there's some new routes that are coming in, but like the 28A stays largely the same. It just has a different name. Other routes like the 10A, 10B stay largely the same. So most of the routes that we know are working well, they are continuing to be aligned and serve the way that they do today.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. All right, and then my last item, is it okay if I take
Yes,
this
go
one?
ahead.
Sure, so and Edward Ryder, our Chief Financial Officer, is gonna be able to probably talk about this maybe at a future meeting, but I just wanted to provide a quick update. FY26 budget process is beginning, believe it or not. I believe the city manager's budget will be coming forward in, gosh, I think it's late October or early November. So we are preparing internally our current services requests and beginning to identify any supplemental requests that we would want to put forward, which could include, some of the service increases, service improvements that we've talked about in years past, as well as some of the other issues that we've talked about. So I think as far as where we are strategically, we are definitely going to want to maintain current services, obviously avoiding service reductions, but also potentially adding some additional costs in there in terms of just maintaining reliability. So that will probably be factored in. Just knowing that we have so many riders, we need to make adjustments to accommodate for them. We are still kind of finalizing what the service improvement ask will be. Obviously, line 32 was kind of the main one we wanted last year that we didn't get. We've had recent improvements on line 30 and line 33, kind of very small improvements. We're still not where we wanted to be in our 2022 ATV network. So, we still have those, but we don't want to just recycle the same ones. We want to kind of reevaluate and see if anything's changed. But at this point, the 32 is kind of the main one that we've looked at and we'll continue to look at. 34 Sundays is also kind of been a recurring thing, trying to bring that up to every 30 minutes. Basically getting all our routes up to all of our core routes up to every 30 minutes throughout the course of the week and weekends, because we do still have a few routes that are running every hour, which is not the service level that we know the city needs. Any more specific questions? Jim, I don't know if you have anything.
go over the timing again of when you think Dash will be able to present to the board or anybody else? I think your budget priority is that early November?
I think the preliminary budget is October, this next month, I believe.
You and that in November.
Your October, November. Just for past precedent, I believe this group provided a special, we had a special meeting actually last year. We convened in late October, I believe it was.
That's correct.
To draft a letter that kind of outlined our priorities for the city manager as he was developing his budget. And it basically just highlighted the 30, 32, 34, those improvements that we talked about before, as being high priorities for this group. So I'm not sure if, you know, we haven't prepared a draft letter or anything tonight, but perhaps that's something that we could get direction from you all if you want us to draft something.
Well, you know, my concern is that last year, didn't they ask you to do a budget with a 3% cut?
Right.
And, you know, is there any way that we can at least send a message to the city manager that we would appreciate not having to cut the budget for like right now, and then, you know, when you guys have your priorities, then we can perhaps address those?
Yeah, so I don't believe the budget guidance has been released yet, but in especially in more recent years, we've been treated. Whatever is the guidance that goes out for all of the other city departments, the city managers have a tendency to treat us just as if any other city departments. So I think especially with Echo CFO and Josh, they do a lot of advocacy to ensure that we stay whole and intact, but just for this group to know that the default stance is that the city manager has a tendency to treat us and run us through the budget process just like any other department.
And that does mean that sometimes he asks for potential reductions, which is why we had to put the 104 on the table last year. Thankfully, we didn't have to follow through with that, but it was, something we had to put on the table. So.
Yeah, which means obviously a reduction in service. I mean,
Right. So.
you're so service focused.
Right, so I think the letter that you all drafted last year, if I remember correctly, did highlight that the top priority is to maintain current service levels.
That is
with
correct.
any reductions. That's above anything else. We want to make sure that. And then assuming that, we also want to request these additional improvements based on the needs of the community. So we could do something similar if that was the desire of this board.
What is the will of the board of this committee? You wish to put a marker down with the city manager early in the budget process?
Yeah, for those who may not be familiar, just quick comment, like Jason shaking his head, and I'm shaking my head, Bobby's brought it up. It's three of us, but once the manager puts together balanced budget and it goes to council, they have had, and we were in a position last year, and the public was in the position last year, having a fight to get money restored in the end, to save 104, I believe it was, because it didn't cut. And so somehow we need to convince the manager that service cuts are just unacceptable to the public, based on our representation as writers. So I think that's a message that's got to go out. So he ideally would not do that to me. And the other thing is, so that's, somehow we need to convey, don't cut any service. Somehow we need to convey Jason's point. I think it's great that Ray's gonna take it internally for action. Dash to put better data together to look at the causes, but the reality is the buses are overcrowded and so increasing the frequency, increasing the number of buses is a solution to that. And I think we ought to at least articulate the problem so that the city manager is aware of it and how I'll stop there. And then third, the idea of asking council to find, say, $850,000 to the ad delete process to fund line 32 is just ludicrous. Without a tax increase, to fund a bunch of schools construction or something, the council doesn't have $850,000 available in the ad delete. So that's got to come from the manager's process. So I think all three of those elements are worth conveying to the city manager preemptively, it is a question of.
I would make a comment about point 2 and point 3 here.
Okay.
So point 2, which was about the overcrowding and the need for more resources, what my fear is, they go to the chart that Martin showed us a little while ago about ridership on certain lines. The argument will be, as you well know, well, why don't you just shut down one of your lines that obviously is not being used very often by passengers, right? Which I realize is in violation of the transit vision plan, all that, but I mean, if I was in his shoes, that's where I would go and say, transfer those resources from the non-productive lines to where your need is. So that's one piece. The third point you made was around.
850,000.
Yeah. So this goes back to a point we talked about 4 years ago, which was, do you in fact have the dash budget as part of the transportation environmental services budget? Or should it in fact be taken out and looked at differently as other parts of the Alexandria budget are? And so, this goes back to Josh's point about infrastructure. The contributions that you make to Dash should not be put in with the rest of the transportation services because it's a standalone entity. So I would argue, and in a way around the problem that I think Jim is alluding to here, is we need to make the case of how do you get out of that box? And the Dash budget is looked at separately in the internal city budgeting process. And so for those who are running for city council, that might be something that one might like to look at if one is successful. Just the thought. But I think there is a consensus that a letter needs to go.
Yeah.
Sooner the better.
Definitely, I think.
Do we need to be vote or anything?
And
or-
We should probably all,
empower Ross.
no, not.
Oh, yeah.
This is your last
I
meeting.
I disappear
When are you off the
at the end
payroll?
of this meeting, So it will be the,
Disappeared by the next meeting.
it will
Yeah,
be
right.
the vice chair's responsibility to coordinate this, at least for the moment. Is there a motion that we proceed with a letter soonest to the city manager about the budget for FY 26, the preparation of it, and the points that have been raised in this conversation?
I would so move.
All right,
I'll second.
second, all in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Any abstention? Anybody on the line? Flo, are you still there?
Yes, I am. Aye.
Are you in favor of this?
Yes, aye.
Okay, Matthew, you there? He dropped off. Okay, all right. There you go. You got the mandate.
Bill and I will work on putting that together and get back to you as soon as we can. Or Jim.
Thank you, Jim. Your service.
Okay, any other questions around budget preparation, et cetera? You have a calendar, right? For the budget preparation.
We have one somewhere. I can send that to you as well.
And I think that would be useful for the entire DAC to know, because that will help guide some of the process of this committee during the year. So if you could circulate that after this meeting as quickly as you can, that would be great. Please go ahead.
When does the city manager provide his guidance?
I was trying to look that up right before I came in here. I think it's usually around end of October, early November, somewhere in there.
So before the city council retreat, budget retreat? Because last year it was November 4th and this year it's like third week of November. the budget.
Let me, when I send the budget calendar, let me get that for you as well.
All right, any other questions for Martin? Thank you. Excellent presentation. Appreciate it as always. All right, Quantum Pilot. Intriguing name.
Okay, so yeah, a few months ago, we started the Quantum Pilot and we did a lot of community meetings. We did a lot of demos at different locations here in the city, and I wanted to share the Quantum Pilot with you. I don't know if anyone has seen it or maybe not yet. But the Quantum Pilot is a system that is innovated, a fully automatically mobility device securement system that allows wheelchairs passengers to be secure in like 25 seconds by themselves. The operator doesn't need to get out of the seat to be able to secure the passengers. So that's the main thing about the Quantum Pilot. Is for manual or motorized wheelchairs, and also be for scooters. Share this. So this is a step-by-step of how the system works. So the mobility passenger centers the wheelchair right here or the scooter against the back seat, and then it engages to be securely locked automatically by pressing this button right here. So when they press the button, the arm from the Quantum is gonna be coming down safely to secure the wheelchair. And this is gonna adjust and grip to make sure that the wheelchair doesn't move throughout the trip. So once the vehicle stops at the destination, the driver is able to release the passenger using the dashboard to control the side of the rider to be able to get out. And we did a little video, a demo video showing how the system works. Audio. So it's really a process that only takes a few seconds for the wheelchair to be secure. That's from the operator side. So this is really to show that the operator at no time needs to get out of the seat to be able to help out the passenger, and he's able to do it from his chair.
No. I see how this would work for a motorized wheelchair or a scooter. How would it work for a conventional wheelchair? I guess that doesn't seem like it would secure it.
It's still gonna have a grip, so it's gonna secure the wheelchair even though it's not if it's a standard wheelchair.
Oh, okay.
So at the moment, we have the system installed in one of the buses. We have the pilot is for 5 systems. But the idea is to get as much feedback as possible to be able to, after we have that feedback, do any type of changes needed and then start installing it on the rest of the buses. And like I said, we've done a lot of demos. We've received a lot of great feedback that we're working with the system to address some of those concerns or comments that we received from the community. So I do want to share with this, that if you know of a community organization, or maybe you're part of another committee that might be helpful for us to do an actual demo, we're happy to attend those meetings or set up something virtually or whatever makes more sense to be able to share this system with more people.
Now, Paul, has your committee, your commission seen this demonstration?
So my term with the Alexandria Commission on Persons with Disabilities actually ended back in July. I'd reached the end of my commission. So right now, I guess I'm kind of just only on this committee.
Okay. Do you have, I would suggest, given your participation on that commission, you might have ideas, and I would encourage you to get in touch with Camilla about organizations that might like to see this demonstration, if you wouldn't mind.
Absolutely. I'd be glad to do that.
Great, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Jim, did you have a comment? Okay. Anyone else?
Yeah, I have a quick clarification question. One, I see that the person in the wheelchair or in the mobility scooter can engage the lock at first. Can they disengage, or can only the driver disengage?
They can also disengage.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay. Cause I saw in the demonstration that the driver can also engage it, but I didn't know if I just wasn't paying attention.
Yeah, both of them can. It's just it's just an option if something happens. The operator is also able to do it from his city without having to get out. But yeah, they both can. And we do have a feedback form in case you want to share your initial reaction to the quantum pilot. This is where we're getting all the feedback and being able to adjust, like I said, the pilot based on the comments that we've received from people.
I have one quick comment. How does this, like when it's not being used by this type of rider, it seems like it takes out seats. Is there a big impact to, just crowding in general, or is it, because I'm not sure how frequently it would be used.
I can answer that. This particular bus where we installed the demo, due to the configuration of seat that was pre-existing, we had to take it out because it wasn't compatible with the system. If we were to order the system with new buses moving forward, we can actually have seats and a system coexisting in the same space.
Interesting.
Got it?
That's it.
All right, as we go into the open forum, there are several questions that committee members raised that we didn't formally put on the agenda, but I want to raise them here in the open forum and then let others raise whatever other questions they may have. So one of the questions that was raised was around how are we doing in terms of the electric buses? And the extent that the electric buses have caused operational or maintenance challenges for the organization. And the sort of follow-up question to that is, do you feel that the technology for electric buses, particularly battery technology, is at the stage that you feel confident that continued purchasing of such vehicles is prudent, or should there be a pause until the technology is improved?
So I can tackle most of those questions. I'll address the last one first.
Okay.
The technology has been at that stage for quite a while now. We would not have made the leap that we have into specifically battery electric buses when we did if we were not confident in the technology and that technology taking us a sizable portion of our fleet. The work that is yet to be complete as far as the technology is that the technology, yes, is still improving. It's still improving mainly by way of increased energy density. The biggest hot issue on all of the OEM's radars, including in the industries as well, is improving the technological capabilities of the vehicles. In our case, it's range. That's the biggest thing that's on our mind as we plan for a transition to a zero emissions fleet. How do we transition to a zero emissions fleet and still meet all of our services? Technology in any one given point in time, well, is not able to address 100% of all of our services. So how do we make sure that this continues to develop so that it always stays ahead of the service requirements? So we do see that energy density is something that is still continuing to climb ever since we started purchasing battery electric buses 5 years ago up till now, and it's still progressing to climb. It has been theorized by some of the organizations that we work with that focuses on this, that this will continue to improve. There will be a point of plateau, and it is speculated that the point of plateau will be somewhere around a neighborhood of 1 megawatt worth of energy. I'm sorry, 1 megawatt hour worth of energy on a bus. So when we bought our first generation of battery electric buses 4 or 5 years ago, they all came in with 440 kilowatt hours worth of energy. Back then, that was big. 2 years before that, 220 was the standard. Moving forward from that, we received buses with 500 kilowatt hours worth of energy, and we have buses on order right now that will be coming in with close to 700 kilowatt hours worth of energy. So it won't be too far in the future where we will have and see buses that will come close to that 1 megawatt hour worth of energy, and we are very much looking forward to that. At the same time, part of the solution is going to be not so much technology on board the buses, but the supporting infrastructure technology as well. We need to ensure that we have the infrastructure, the charging infrastructure facilities, one here in this facility and also on the field, to support the technology and to support the fleet, again, to ensure that we meet all of our services. As we progress in our zero emissions plan and our goal, our priority is always going to be service first. We've taken the approach that our service will never yield to the technology. The technology will have to yield to the service. So we want to, our first and foremost goal is to maintain service to our riding public, to our community. Second, to maintain steady good repair, and third, and almost equally as high, is to transition our fleet to a zero emissions fleet. So those are the challenges, and those are the things that we have on our radar, and that we've been actively navigating for close to 5 years now, and we will continue to navigate as we chug forward. Answering the first part of your question, the fleet we have today, we have 14 buses today, which span across 3 or 4 generations of vehicles that we have so far in our fleet. For the most part, they work. We've seen them running on the street every day. It is not without the challenges. It's not without the challenges of the ecosystem of manufacturers and their support systems. As you know, we have intentionally divvied up our approach and put all of our eggs in different baskets. So ever since we bought our first electric buses, we always split our projects in half and gave one half of our orders to one manufacturer and gave the other half of the order to their competitors. One, to mitigate our risk, but also to help the industry, or to encourage the industry to demonstrate their advancements in technology, to demonstrate adoptions of interoperability and SAE standards. And we've seen a lot of success. We've seen a lot of challenges with that, and we were able to provide a lot of feedback due to that. One of the challenges that we see is that one of the manufacturers went out of business. So as you saw, they filed for bankruptcy, and then they divested into 3 different directions. So they kind of landed in all different places. That fleet, for the most part, still runs today. It is not as if a manufacturer going out of business or exiting the market is not new to the transit industry. It's happened. It's a routine thing that happens all the time. In this particular case, 3 aspects of that company went to 3 different landing spots. And so right before the bankruptcy, and I don't want to dive into too far of a tangent, a safety recall hit some numbers of those buses, which didn't immediately bring those buses down. But when it did affect a particular bus, we had to wait upon the OEM for a resolution to that safety recall issue. The problem is, today, the bus provider was purchased by Phoenix Motor Cars. The supplier of the technology was acquired to a different company, Volvo. the way the acquisition worked is that Phoenix owes us the resolution to that safety recall. However, that safety recall lives in a battery system, which is not owned by Phoenix Motor Cars. Therein lies the problem. And so two different parties, who are not on the same page, have to work together for Phoenix Motor Cars to eventually deliver us a solution. And that starts to illustrate a lot of the complexities of not so much technology, but in the unfortunate case this time, how one of our the baskets that we put our eggs in just kind of split apart and went different places. And now we are waiting on a resolution for that. Long story short, most of our buses are running, some are down. The ones that are down are waiting a resolution that doesn't quite have a clear answer as of now.
Thank you. Very helpful.
Just
Go ahead,
jump in.
Jason,
I would
please.
tie into the rodeo too. Another great, again, please sign up for the rodeo, please be a judge. Another thing you'll learn at the rodeo is there's other transportation agencies there, and you learn a lot from them and what they do and their culture and how they do things. But I come from the aircraft maintenance world. That's where a lot of my background is. So I love maintenance conversations and logistics and everything goes with that. So I was speaking with a couple agencies all at once saying, what do you love about electric? What do you hate about electric? To the maintainers that actually do this. And they said, here's what I like. And then, they talked about all the benefits that we talked about. And then they said, here's the things you're not going to hear about is the sustainment piece. You have to replace the batteries. We've had them for 5 years. I don't know if we've really talked about sustainment and how much those batteries cost. They told me it's $50,000 a bus. It sounds pretty expensive.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, when it comes down to bending service to technology, you said we won't bend service to technology. Technology needs to bend to us. So when it comes to financing, when it comes to budgets and making hard decisions on cutting fat or muscle being routes, as I see it, fat being things that we could do differently just to save a couple dollars here and there. Are we deprioritizing or will we deprioritize electric procurement for new versus cutting services?
No, so in our particular case, fortunately for us, the world of operating funding lives differently from the world of capital funding.
Right.
So there's a delineation.
But operating is, but that's where I go back to the sustainment piece. That's the operating. So the two do come back together eventually because of the sustainment piece. Because you have to buy those new batteries, you have to maintain that system, you have to build that new infrastructure.
Right. Well, and again, all that is funded through different pots of fundings, and so where we need to turn all of our attention to ensure that the zero emissions, the fleet side is successful. All that lives and comes out of the CIP. And as far as operating, all the operating comes out of general funds. The city general budget process on the operating side that is apart from the CIP. So where if I'm understanding your point correctly, where our zero emissions goals and our priority does conflict with, and we will be, we will be seeing difficulties with this, is we do have to make a choice where resources are limited. There is going to have to be a choice between city good repair and pursuing the goals. And our goals are purchasing entirely zero emissions buses by 2027 and having a fleet-wide full fleet conversion by 2027. So that is where the opportunity for conflict occurs. And in our case, the board has adopted the priority that city good repair should always trump zero emissions, right? So we can only afford to do one or the other. City good repair only comes first. We can afford to do both. And great, fantastic, we'll do both. But that word of conflict lives separately from the word of conflict that funds the ATS.
Yeah, different color money. Got it. Thank you. And I know Martin's walked us through this of like, hey, sometimes we just have to go with the low emission purchase, which you walked us through last time. So I get that. Thank you.
Thank you. Since Yvette is not on this, had to drop off this call to go to graduate school. I promised that I would raise her question, which is, are there other municipalities in the local area that have the equivalent of a DAC? Because her idea was, if they do, maybe at one meeting, we should try to do a joint meeting or multiple gathering of these organizations for sharing information and ideas. Anyone know?
I will say yes, and there's a very special reason. Number of years ago, before I even entered adulthood, I was in high school. One of my very first roles in the transit industry was I served as a member of the transit advisory group, very similar moniker to this, as a high school representative of back then my home system, Montgomery County, Maryland. So at least
okay.
back then, there existed a group. I don't know if it still exists today, but I'll defer to Martin or Camilla.
Of course.
Go ahead.
I would say that I'm pretty sure Arlington should have something similar.
Yep, they have a TAC, it's called the Transit Advisory Committee, which is similar to Rider Advisory, and then Wilmot has, of course, their own Rider Advisory, the RAC, Rider. I think they both meet once a month.
Well, I want to state her desire to see whether we could organize some sort of a gathering between similar organizations. All right, having said that, I'm opening it up to anybody else for comments, concerns, questions that we haven't covered at this meeting.
Do we have a next meeting date?
Oh, yeah, that's.
We have a next meeting date?
We haven't set up, but we can definitely get together to see what the next meeting. I think based on the budget, I think it would be a good idea to have that schedule and be able to coordinate a meeting before the budget process.
Anyone else? Do I have a motion to adjourn?
I make that motion.
Okay, second?
I'll second it.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you all.
Congrats, Rob.